Well, good evening, everyone. I am Councilman James Tate, representing District 1. And today we are talking about COVID hesitancy. Now, I'm going to let you know right now, if you're offended by elected officials trying to get residents that they serve to get the vaccination, the COVID-19 vaccination, you're probably going to be offended this entire recording, because that's exactly what we're doing today. When we were besieged by COVID-19 in the city of Detroit last year in March, it took us by surprise how vicious it would rip through our community. And while we were certainly one of the first communities within the state of Michigan to get hit extremely hard, we weren't the last. We were one of the first communities, though, to gather the necessary PPE for our residents to remain as safe as possible. We were also one of the first communities to bring in COVID-19 testing in the city of Detroit. In addition to that, we were also one of the first communities to bring in the mass vaccinations within the city of Detroit, so much so that we have other communities who are coming, other members of other communities coming into the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan to receive their vaccine. We've done a lot of things right, and I want to thank each and every Detroiter out there who's taken the time to take every precaution, keep that social distancing, 6 feet away from each other, keep on your personal protection gear, your PPE, your mask, or your face shield, and as well as those who took it upon themselves to receive the COVID vaccine. I have mine, but today we're going to be talking about the hesitancy. We're at a point right now in the city of Detroit, we're lagging far behind. Remember I told you about all those things that we did first. We're lagging far behind the rest of the state in so many areas when it relates to COVID vaccine intake. We're looking at 35% of Detroiters having being administered at least one dose of the COVID vaccine. That's not good enough. We're often talking about trying to open up the state, open up the city. We're not going to be able to do that if this virus continues to run rampant within the city of Detroit. Remember, I told you about COVID vaccine hesitancy. Well, guess what? I was one of those folks as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I want to bring in our first guest who is going to break down to us some of the information, the myths, but also the real information about the COVID-19 vaccines. There's at least 3 of them that have been approved by the US government to be used. We know there was controversy surrounding one of them, but we want to make sure you have real information. We're going to talk about some of that controversy as well. Joining us today, I want to first bring in, she is the Health Communication Specialist for the Health Department, as well as the CDC Foundation, none other than Niveen Elder. We want to thank you for joining us. Turn that camera on for us, Niveen.
Yeah. I think the host has to turn mine on for me, if you don't mind.
All right, hosts, let's get those cameras on. And while you do that, I also want to introduce none other than Tanaya Hackney, who is the outreach nurse, outreach nurse, with the health department. And if I said that incorrect, please correct me. Again, thank you both for joining us. Team, can we get them up on the screen? All right, we got one.
All right,
Nice on the
hello.
screen. How are you today?
Good, how are you, Councilman? Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We've been having some computer issues over here, so bear with us. We appreciate you being patient and always willing to join us to provide real information to Detroiters. So I know you have a presentation that you wanted to provide the residents, and it's extremely important for you to really break down, what do the numbers really look like, in the city.
Absolutely.
What should people be afraid of? What should they be proud of as well as Detroiters, right? Because there's some pride that we can take in what we see going on in the city of Detroit. But without further ado, I'm going to close mine and I'm going to let the floor.
Sure thing. And my partner, Tanaya, is on the line as well. She's a registered nurse and a nurse educator. So she might be hopping in with me and giving me that support. So I'm going to go ahead and share my presentation with you all. And so I just want to start out and acknowledge the fact of something that Councilman Tate had just mentioned, that he was hesitant. I went to school for public health. I studied it extensively, and I work in the field of public health, and yet I was hesitant. until I was able to educate myself and gain that information. And so if you are in that place right now, don't worry, because we want to just give you the information that you need in order to make an informed decision. So let's get right into it. One of the first things that we like to do in all of our presentations and gatherings is just tell you what is happening in Detroit right now. So from the beginning of the pandemic until now, we've seen over 50,700 confirmed cases. This is our community members, this is our leaders, this is our family and our friends in the city who have come down with COVID. We've also seen that we've had over 2,100 confirmed deaths in this city as well. Now, when you look at the right side of the screen, we have this measure called the positivity test rate. And what this means is that we take the total amount of people who are tested and we figure out how many of those tests came back positive. And so what you want to see with this number is that the lower it is, the better it is for our community, because that means that less tests are coming back positive. So right now you'll see that Michigan as a whole is about 6.2%. Detroit's at 6.7, so just a bit higher. And you can look at the surrounding counties and see that they're somewhat around the same area. And so we really want to do our best at keeping these numbers low. As Councilman Tate had mentioned earlier, Detroit was hit hard in the beginning of the pandemic. But, we made a comeback, especially during the summer, in terms of how Detroiters took it upon themselves to keep others safe and to keep themselves safe, to the extent that we had national recognition about the initiatives that Detroit was doing. And so it's something I want you to be proud of and something I want you to keep continuing. So here's a lot of information on the screen. I want to break down a few bits of it. Now, as was mentioned before, if you look at the top numbers under the yellow bar, that's the percent of the population who have received at least one dose. You see Detroit's up there, about 36%. If you look all the way to the right, Michigan's at 56, and you could see different counties right in the middle. Now, what you'll notice is that Detroit is lagging quite a bit. The other counties in the state as a whole seems to be doing a much better job of vaccinating. And these numbers are important because they're telling us what's going on in our communities, so we can come out here and have conversations about, what are folks' hesitancies. The middle section on the screen is showing how many doses have been administered, how many doses we have scheduled, and how many doses we have received. And then at the last section at the bottom of the screen, it shows the breakdown by race. And this further tells us the story of what is the evidence of what's happening in our community, who's getting vaccinated, is this reflective of our population in Detroit as well? So I'm happy to be able to provide these numbers to you, and I'm proud to be able to provide this kind of data, but it does show that we need to improve. So to start off, there's three main benefits that we'd like to share with folks about why you should get the COVID vaccine. The first is that the COVID vaccinations, all three of them, they're really great at preventing hospitalization and death. Now, I don't want to bring us back to March of last year or the beginning of the pandemic, but we were hit very hard. Our hospitals were hit hard. We were running out of supplies. I know people who work in hospitals, and the stories they were coming back with were traumatizing about what they were seeing inside. But what this vaccine does is that it prevents those hospitalizations and it prevents death. Now, the second point is that the vaccine is a safe way of building protection. Now, in the past, if people want to get protection, unfortunately, they had to get sick with COVID and their body developed antibodies, but even those are temporary. But the vaccine skips you getting sick altogether. Side effects are another thing, which we'll touch on, but it's still a safer way of building protection. And the third main benefit is that the vaccinations are essentially one of the, if not the most important tool we have to stopping this pandemic. And so we're hoping that folks get out there and at least just listen to what's going on here. So I want to give you guys a little bit of the science aspect now. So here's what happened. This is how immunity essentially works. Now, if you look at the top flow chart, you'll see that what happens when you get sick or you get immunity without the vaccine. So oftentimes people are exposed to COVID, they get sick, they come down with symptoms. Unfortunately, some folks pass away. But if you survive it, then your body develops these antibodies which help to protect you and arm your body in case you're exposed to COVID again. However, with the vaccine provides you with the vaccine version of the germ. It can't give you COVID. And some people might have some side effects, but when you have those side effects, it's not because you have COVID. It's because your body sees that there's something in your body and it's saying, hey, we got to protect ourselves for when we come up with COVID, make sure that our body is armored. And then you develop these antibodies and you develop that immunity that you need. So let's just kind of play a little quick example. If you are looking at all of these weird things on the screen, which one would you say is the coronavirus? Now, usually we have people unmute themselves, but it's all right. So just in your head. And if you guess,
can I play?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, can I go with 5? Let's go with 1.
1? Okay,
yeah.
All right.
I was gonna say 5, but 1, something about 1 is standing out to me.
It looks like people are putting numbers in the chat, so that's a good way too. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, Councilman Tate, I'm sorry, but it seems that some of the constituents had the right answer, which is number 7. But thanks for playing along. Maybe we'll have you phone a friend next time. So what we wanted to represent here was that what actually happens when your body takes the vaccine. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but in all the slides that we had just presented, this molecule was present somewhere on that slide. And it represents the vaccine because the vaccine gives you these small doses of COVID. That's not harmful to you, but just so much that your body can recognize it and your body can start to build its defense. That way, when you're exposed to COVID head on, like you are in this question, your body's able to say, oh, I already know that's coronavirus. I know what to do. I know how to attack it. Let's get rid of it. And so I hope that explains a little more about how the vaccine works in your body. So moving on, we talk about these vaccines and some people are coming up with some crazy things saying how it's dangerous for you and there's a microchip, whatever. Well, let's just settle it here. We'll talk about what exactly is in this vaccine, all 3 vaccines. There's 3 main categories. One is the mRNA or the adenovirus. And that's one category and it's the only active ingredient. That's the small part that's taken from coronavirus. And again, it can't give you COVID. The second category is lipid or fat bubbles. And what this does is to coat that piece of the virus so that your cells can pick that up. This includes things like cholesterol. So things that our body are familiar with. And the third is a saline or salt solution. And this is the same type of solution you would get if you were dehydrated and you had to go to the hospital to get fluids to rehydrate yourself. And so, we always make the joke that this is a pretty clean vaccine. And I know it's corny, but I say it often that I know what's in this. I know more about what's in this vaccine than I do my Doritos. And I love my Doritos, but I can't read anything on the back of the ingredients, but I can for this. So I hope that gives you a little more insight about what is in this. So another concern that we see folks having is that they have, they're wondering, well, how was it that this was developed so quickly? I'm wary of that, and I was too at first. But then my colleagues helped to provide me with the information to understand that this isn't the first thing that was accelerated. So firstly, modern science has really helped us to accelerate our turnaround time in terms of our vaccine developments. We've had vaccines for decades. And in fact, the technology that's been used to develop these vaccines, although they're new, the technology can be dated back to nearly 30 years. And so we have a lot of resources about that. In addition, there's been so many collaborative efforts. I still remember that there was institutions around the world who said, hey, you have to stop researching what you're doing. Let's put all of our focus and all of our resources on researching vaccines for COVID. Thirdly, is that we've had tons of volunteers as well. So many people have enrolled into the studies, people from my own team, people from our city. And so it was great to see that there's different people represented, different skin colors represented, different health statuses represented. And that's very important because it tells us, we want to see people look like us who were in those studies, and we were able to see that. again, for point four, previous research, there's been tons of work that's been done on vaccine research. And thankfully, that's what helped us to get that quick turnaround, because the science has already been studied. Available funds, there's funds poured in from different organizations, from different companies, from the government, who have really helped to provide us with the resources that we needed to further study this. And we also did get the FDA emergency use authorization, which gave us that stamp of approval that we can use this in an emergency. But mind you, the vaccines were not the only things that received emergency use authorization. Some of the previous vaccines have used that in the past, as well as COVID testing. That's something that also received emergency use authorization. So, that was something that had to be accelerated so we could test our communities. And so, speaking on communities, I want to just take a minute to recognize Dr. Marcella Nunez-Smith and what she has done for the city of Detroit. Now, she's a physician, she's a public health leader, a health equity activist, and she's currently serving on President Biden's COVID-19 advisory board. And I want to share her name with you all, because she is one of the individuals amongst many who advocated for vaccine equity specifically in our city. We know what happened last year in our city. We know the names of our community members and our friends who were lost. So when the opportunity of a vaccine came around, we knew that Detroit needed to be on the list. Our community is sadly at times not often recognized, but with people who look like us and people who see us and can hear Detroit, they know that we are individuals, and our communities are ones that need those resources. And so our city was spoken about at that high level and granted specific inventory and access to vaccines. So I want you all to know that there's people who are rooting for our city, who want to see us thrive. I mean, individuals who look like us, see us, and hear us. So on that note, it's important that in our communities, we're also equipping ourselves with the right information. I'm sure that many of you have heard about the different myths on the screen, and I would love to sit here and debunk every single one with you, but I know that we're running short on time. But just know that it's important to figure out where you can get correct information. Come to our team. We're more than happy to speak with you one-on-one. I know Tanaya, my team members, anyone at the health department, look at CDC's resources and whatnot. And we're more than happy to help you digest that information as well. And just in case you didn't catch it, everything on the screen are myths, so these are not true. All right, and so as we start to wrap up, I just want to mention some things that some of the perks that folks get when they are fully vaccinated. Mind you, some of these can't be taken into effect just yet, but they are coming down the pipeline. I do have to say though, my favorite one on here is that if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine if you're exposed to someone who had COVID-19. But if you start to show symptoms, go ahead and isolate, because I cannot stay in my room anymore for 14 days when I've been exposed. So thankfully fully vaccinated and I'm good to go. But just remember that being fully vaccinated means that you've completed your series of the 2 doses for Pfizer or Moderna, or the 1 dose of Johnson & Johnson, and it has to be 2 weeks after you've completed that, because that gives your body enough time to prepare itself and protect itself. All right, and then you might have heard about our Good Neighbor program, where you can get $50 if you bring in anyone who would like to get vaccinated. If you want some more information, just call that number below. We'll be more than happy to speak to you. And then I just want to leave you all with some resources here on the screen. Please use these to the fullest extent. They're here for all of you, and we want to make sure that we're really reaching every member of our community and every member in Detroit. So if there's anything we could do, just feel free to let us know. And that concludes this portion of the presentation, so thank you.
Niveen, thank you so much. We appreciate all that great information. And folks, certainly you can copy the information down now, but when we wrap up at the end of all the other presentations and portions of this particular recording, we're going to make sure that we have the contact sheet back up, because we definitely want you to be able to utilize each and every resource that we have available and ask every question that you can if you have any. Can I ask one question? Can we go back to that one? I know we were talking about myths, and I know you said you didn't want to go through all of them, but hey, you know, these are the reasons why people are choosing not to get it. You know, we don't want people just to kind of pass by this. This is some important stuff. You know, I've heard about the microchip. I've heard about, you know, you see up there infertility. Where does all this stuff come from? You know, and also, I mean, the one thing I've heard about, and it sounds like there may be some truth to it, is the virus is actually in the vaccine, right? The virus is in the vaccine. So, but it sounds like that may be a little bit overblown in terms of its impact on making you ill. So where does all this come from? And really, let's talk about the virus being in the vaccine. I want to park on that.
Yeah. So I know that T's ready to go. So I'm going to shoot this one over to her, if you don't mind.
All right.
Okay.
So thank you for joining us as well.
No problem. Thank you for having us. Hello, everyone. Starting with, I think the first one you asked me about infertility. We have not had that. We actually have been on a panel with the doctors, and along with that, the CDC has said it's actually safer for when we talk about pregnancy for the women to get it, because what we're seeing is they're the most vulnerable, the ones that are pregnant. As far as infertility, we have not seen anything related to infertility, not at all.
And T, tell them about the, because we've heard that people say, oh no, that vaccine has the virus in it. I'm not putting the virus in my body.
I heard that too. And in the beginning, I was hesitant, and I was on the floors, working the floors in hospitals. And I was like, I'm not doing it. Then I found out more information. I found out the right information, found out the right sources, because that's where a lot of information, I know, Mr. Tate, you mentioned, where does this information come from?
Yeah.
They just put it out there everywhere. Somebody's sitting at home saying, you know what, this is what I think today. And they put it out there, and then other people, they grab on it because it's easier to believe what's not true than the simple things.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about it, because when we look at technology, right? I mean, the fact that we're doing this right now, you know, we're in a pandemic and we're able to educate people about the vaccine. That's a wonderful thing. We're using technology the proper way. But just like you said, Nurse Hackney, there are a lot of folks who are sitting at home right now trying to figure out ways to get disinformation out there as well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it is. So it's very important that we educate where to get the right information from. And that's why we have our number. I was going to copy and paste and put that information, Niveen, if you can, in the chat so people can take pictures of our resources, because that's why we have the nurses line. Because if you have questions, we're there one-on-one, 876-4000. I urge everyone with a question, a concern, anything, to just call. You can talk to a nurse one-on-one. There's no judgment. We research it all day long. Niveen, me, we have a whole team that just takes time just to research what's going on, to follow the data and give you the real information and where to get it from.
So I know we've heard about this thing. We've heard about this thing called herd immunity. You know, it kind of trickled out at first, you know, last year around March. We started hearing politicians talk about it in Washington, and they were sprinkling it a little bit here and there. Now we're starting to hear about it a lot. And that herd immunity is when X amount of folk within a particular area are, I guess they're immune from it, and it kind of spreads. So talk to us a little bit about what this herd immunity is and how do we acquire it? And at 35%, how close are we in the city of Detroit to this so-called herd immunity?
From 35%, the subtraction from 100%. So we're looking at 75, well, I'm sorry, 65%. Let me do my math. Let me go back to 65% of Detroiters not vaccinated. There's a lot of hesitancy. And we talk about herd immunity. Herd immunity is basically, so if I go into a home, me as a nurse, I want to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to protect my patients, their family members, the dog, the cat, and then when I come out, myself, because I have to bring everything home or go to another patient's house and then protect them. Herd immunity is protecting everyone, not just thinking about, oh, maybe I'll get sick from COVID-19. That's true. But what about your neighbor? What about your mother, your dad? We've seen and lost so many people. And we need to think about others that are around us. You can have a great immune system. You may have had COVID. You may have not had serious illness from COVID, but we lost so many other people because their immune system wasn't as efficient or up there as ours. And because of that, we need to think about them.
And if I can also add to that, so I'm sure everyone's heard about that those strains being out there, those variants of COVID. Now, what happens is that if we have high rates of COVID in our communities, that means that we can most likely see a strain coming out of those high cases. So
That's
when we
right.
bring those numbers down, and when majority of our community is immune and has that protection, there's less likely for a variant or a strain to come out that might compromise the integrity of the vaccines that we're taking. And so that's something that's also important to keep in mind as well, that as long as cases are high, then we might see more strains come about. But so far we're doing good, and we just got to make sure more of our community gets vaccinated and protects themselves and each other.
Definitely.
And
also,
go ahead, Hackney.
I was just thinking, I didn't answer your question about the live COVID-19 being in the vaccine. No, there is no live ingredient of COVID in the vaccines. Niveen, do you have the slide to that? Because I believe I have a slide, and it tells you what's in the vaccine. And basically, I'm going to tell you right now. There you go. Thank you very much. When we look at the ingredients of first the Pfizer and the Moderna, because they are mRNA, which is the messenger. That's basically the live thing that's in the COVID vaccine. The COVID vaccine. So that with salt bubbles or lipid bubbles, those are like fat bubbles that are going to encase the mRNA, which is the messenger. The saline salt solution is going to take, and that's just fluid. It's just going to take that and be able to go through your body. So the mRNA is the live active ingredient. The lipid fat bubbles, those encase the mRNA so it can go through your body. And the saline salt, it has some sugar in it. It helps it go through the body. It works to ensure that the vaccine's pH is balanced and make sure it's comfortable when it's administered. So there's no live COVID vaccine, no live COVID-19, even with the Johnson & Johnson, the adenovirus.
We're going to talk about Johnson & Johnson as well. We're going to make sure we capture that, what you just said, because that is something that many people have in their mindset. I mean, it's almost like the flu, right? I mean, people say that all the time. I got the flu from the vaccine. I got COVID. So that same, right? So I get it.
So it's like what Niveen,
Well, I was going to ask, because we're going to make sure we have an opportunity to bring you guys back, because we're going to open for questions for the community. We're going to go into our next segment. You have time to stick around, both of you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. Well, we appreciate you. We're going to go to the next segment. We're going to come back to you guys at the end and open up for questions, because I see some hands already raised. You piqued the interest of the folks who are here, so we appreciate you. And if you stick around, we'll be coming right back.
876-4000, Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 also.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you heard all the updated information. You heard it directly from the professionals who do this every day. We talked about virus hesitancy, vaccine hesitancy. Hey, Reg, let's take that screen off so we can do the one shot. We talk about vaccine hesitancy, and we're going to introduce you to a couple of folks who were in the same boat, just like I said I was in. Niveen, you heard her say the same thing. These are folks who were very hesitant, and I believe we actually have someone who hasn't received the vaccination because she's hesitant herself still currently right now. We'd like to bring over onto the panel, Mr. Leroy Webster Jr., Mr. Wardell Crutchfield, Ms. Chandra Walton, and Ms. Dolores DePriest with her daughter, Angela Pickett.
Councilman, give us
Bring 'em over,
1
team.
second.
All righty. Yeah, I told you these computers, we burning them out. All right, let's turn on those screens for everyone so we can see faces. Can everyone turn on their screens? Or team, can you turn on screens if they're disabled?
You're not in it.
All right. We're seeing some folks. Mr. Crutchfield, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. So as the other folks come on, we just want to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves. I believe, Mr. Crutchfield, you were someone who was pretty hesitant to receive the vaccine. Is that correct? Am I getting that information proper?
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay. Well, what was the thing that encouraged you to get the vaccination? And when did you get it? Let me just ask that first.
Yeah, I got the second dose about a month ago.
Okay.
And I was hesitant I got it because my parents are teachers and they were Army. So that's one. And two, I'm around my niece, my nephew, and of course my wife a lot. So I didn't want to put them at risk. And I work in the transportation industry. So rather than put them at risk, I just took the vaccine instead.
All right. And Mr. Leroy Webster Jr., thank you for joining us as well. We appreciate you being here. You were also a bit apprehensive about getting that vaccination. Why was that, and when did you actually get it?
I got the first one on April the 8th or the 9th, and then the second one like on the 28th or 29th of April. I was very reluctant. I mean, I went kicking and screaming, you know. I just didn't have too much confidence in the data that was presented in the beginning. There's nothing against anyone. It wasn't anything personal. I just didn't have enough confidence in it. I kept thinking everything was practice, and it was still at a point where it was experimental. So I didn't want to do it, but due to the fact that I have two parents that are, I won't say seniors, but they had pre-existing concerns, and I also coach kids, that I needed to do something to make sure that it wasn't me that possibly passed anything on to either group. And my experiences with the first dosage was not the greatest. Just be honest with you, the side effects took me down for like roughly 4 or 5 days, same as both of my parents. And then I had to end up putting my mother in the hospital from that. You know, she's home about a week ago. So it wasn't one of the greatest things for me. You know, I'm not trying to say I'm not the biggest advocate for it, but I'm not the enemy for it either. You know, I think it helped a lot of people, but from my experience, I think it did me on a personal note. It didn't really affect me. I mean, I only had the flu. I haven't had the flu shot since I was 10 or 11. And I'm 49 and had the flu maybe 4 times since. I like those odds, you know, but this thing here is brand new. And I was not aware. And like I said, I didn't have enough of the information before me to sit confident